skeleton, we've got to put spacers back in. And I actually have in my notes that articulate the skeleton, we've got to put spacers back in. And I actually have in my notes the distances between almost all of the vertebrae.
Okay.
And what we're going to do is we're going to take marine ply.
Okay.
And cut discs of marine ply and put it together. But we really can't. You know, what it's going to take is we're going to have blanks that are basically rough size and have a bandsaw on hand, and we're going to have to fit each individual plate between the vertebrae. And then when we get done, we seal the outside edges, and of course that'll be a slightly different color than the actual bone. It's not the actual bone. You don't know why anybody.
I've noticed in other skeletons that I've visited and taken pictures of that they have that feature.
Right. Yeah, most of the time they just stick plywood, but I think considering the durability of one of this, it's going to cost us so much.
Cal Academy has like a mustard colored goo.
Yeah.
It looks like that's between.
A lot of that is you mean skeletons that are in the collection?
No, the rearticulated skeleton.
Rearticulate, yeah. What that is, they've got plywood and then they've got a coating around the outside of that. It's like a silicone stuff.
Small gray rail that they have there that's suspended from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Now this,
Laying on the right side, and the ribs on the right side were bearing the weight of the whale, and so they were broken, dragging the whale out. The ribs on the left side, we disarticulated, took off, and laid them down in the pit, and then buried them very carefully. And the ones on the right side, we left a sheet of blubber on the right side to act as a skid plate to actually get the whale down into the pit. And so they didn't come as clean, but they also were broken. Many of them were broken. But the one that's really fascinating is, this right here. It's the first two ribs on the left side. This guy took a whack at some point, and then you've got the osteoblast and the osteoclast, right? The osteoclast remove bone, the osteoblast lay bone down. And what happens when you get injuries in animals like this is you end up getting the osteoblast just going nuts, and the osteoclast just simply can't keep up with it. So this is the result, this highly fused bone. And actually, Dr. Woodhouse is interested very much in coming down just to see these ribs.
Oh, great.
So
Now Woodhouse, I know his name. What is
he's the curator of mammalogy at the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy. He's a cetacean specialist, and he's articulated.
Oh, great.
Probably half of the skeletons, or been heavily involved with half the skeletons in state.
I just met Shauna Fry, who was the coordinator of the Whale Corps, the group of volunteers that go out.
The Stranded Network.
Yeah, well, no, not the Stranded Network. They're doing whale watch trips.
Outdoor situation, and this, for all intents and purposes, is outdoor.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the other thing is, it's about $200 for 25 pounds, plus the cost of the acetone.
Of the Butte Bar.
Yeah, or you can use alcohol. We can use ethanol alcohol, which eliminates a lot of toxicity problem, and considering it's volunteers, kids, that sort of thing.
Right.
The Butte Bar is not that toxic stuff.
Okay.
But the acetone, the White House paint.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like the look of the bone.
Mm-hmm.
And if we put some the Butte Czar stuff on the bones, that'll bring a little bit more of the yellow coloration out. And you can put a fairly thick coat on, which will give it a little bit of sheen to the bone as well. But more importantly, what it does, it penetrates in and it stops what's going on with those bones there. And it's a good thing to do as things get cleaned up. But you can't put it on too soon because then you can't get grease out. And that's the other thing about the bones, especially what I noticed when I was doing all the war job and stuff. If you go too far, it's taking too much grease out, the bones just fall apart. If you don't get enough grease out, then you can't work with them, and you end up with a puddle of grease underneath these guys, which is fairly early mammalian development. So it's a totally different skull structure. I mean, this, for example, is the premaxilla, and you and I, this is right here.
Right.
And this has been stretched all the way back, and this is the nasals, which are right here.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's the whole thing's pulled back.
Oh, that's great. You can see where is this where the blows were?
The blowholes are about right here, and then right here is a great big, in essence, bag of the oil.
Oh.
Okay, and that's what they use for their sound reception and transmission.
Like the spermaceti oil and the sperm whale?
exactly, the same deal, but it goes right here on these guys. And then what
Oh,
it
this is
is
large. I didn't realize
Yeah,
how
it-
large this
this
was.
is all totally full of that oil, and down into this cavity down here is full of the oil as well. And what they do is they send their signal out. This acts like a magnifier, if you will.
Right.
Sends a signal out, and then it comes
Kind of
back.
focuses the sound and sends it out.
And then if you look at the
Does
periodics,
but it doesn't, does it come back and receive the sound here, or is it like a dolphin where it comes back in the lower jaw?
well,
No, it doesn't
there's
come back in the lower jaw.
a lot of debate about that, but this bone right here, if you look at the density of this right here, this is your,
Overlip?
right, this is the ear, okay? Go ahead, hold the bone. Feel the density of the
Oh,
bone.
wow, it's really
okay?
dense,
It's
yeah.
much more dense, it's much more calcified, so it's completely different density of bone. And then how it's actually received and transmitted, the point is, the sound waves ultimately concentrate on this because it's completely different density than the rest of the skull. That's where they get their hearing perception, and that's how they can
Great.
interpret the
And
sounds.
this is normally located in
well,
this area, or is it deep in
The one on the other side, no, here it is. This is the one that's still attached.
Oh, okay.
See?
You see that down there, Amy?
Now, these guys do not have an external auditory meatus, an ear canal, if you will. It's closed off to the outside for obvious reasons. And that fills up with wax. And we actually did a dissection to remove those wax plugs. And because there's
It fills up with wax around?
there's an opening in here that fills up with wax that goes into that, in essence. And that those because it's not open to the outside, the wax that forms in there, just like the wax in your ear, it can't fall out or come out. So it builds up and forms little rings like a tree. And you can actually take and section
growth
that
rings.
and exactly,
That's
and
a way
age
of
the whale.
aging the whale.
We saved those, but at some point I guess they got thrown away, which is really too bad, but still.
Well, I'll ask around though, because I've been also communicating with Bob Jones about the whale, the vertebrate.
The cervicals are all in line. The cervicals break into the thoracic. In basically all mammals, there's 7 cervical vertebrae. We've got the atlas and the axis. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then here we break into the thoracic, which is where the ribs start attaching, and you'll start seeing articulation points for the ribs. Yeah, down here on these.
Those are the
costals.
articulation
The costals here have the places for the articulation. But in most cetaceans, the cervical vertebrae are pretty well fused. In fact, something like this orca here, they're totally fused and much more compact than what they are in gray. Gray actually has a pretty good sized neck for a whale.
And dolphins?
Dolphins are pretty fused too. Yeah, in fact, in most of the dolphins, you can't even tell the difference one cervical from the next. So here we go to the thoracics. You know what we do? Let's leave spacing between
The groups?
the bones so that when we put the ribs out, we've got some room to work with. Those would be this tight, but then these, remember we've got the intercalated discs, okay? And then we've got to put the ribs in, and normally the ribs are going to be dropping below because we're doing them sideways. We need to put a little bit more space between these the thoracic vertebrae. So I'd say maybe 2 inches between each one, and we're going to have a hard time
Should
getting
I
into
get something to, like a little?
L, and then you know, you already got C for the cervical vertebra. It's I think the standard thing is X. And then the ribs are RR1, RR2, and then LR1, LR2, etc. That's how those will be numbered. So you've got rib, and you've got right and left.
Right.
And the chevrons will be listed as CB, whatever number, and then we'll, after that, put in brackets the vertebra that they're associated with. This is wonderful. All this arthritis, if you will, in the thoracic region of this whale. I mean, this guy was old.
That's
the
is
Yeah,
the indicator that
this-
there's
rough
This
texture.
roughness here, that's arthritis by definition. There's bone spurs like that, and you can see it goes right in here into these facets between the various vertebrae. I mean, when this guy was moving, he was in pain.
So there's absolutely no idea how old this animal was.
No,
Not
but
even
40
a guesstimate.
In 45 feet. Well, see, they're talking about 77, years plus. I would say at least that. Stand real well. That's okay.
What was the, are you familiar with the story about the whale? So it must have been around like in the 1800s, and they were using that for whaling?
Will be. These don't fit together.
Yeah, so the
These are
vertebrae-
farther down. So
Now it gets shady.
okay. What we need to do, we need to find all the ones with the costals on the lateral processes. Not to be confused with lumbars. This one here is lumbar.
How do you know that?
See, this is the ribs articulate.
Oh, okay. Costal facets.
Yeah.
That's where the ribs articulate. Right here.
This one.
Oh.
Oh, I see. Really tall.
We're gonna have to.
So there's 10 of these? 10 ribs?
10, yeah. I don't remember. If it's the same as others or not.
This is a costal facet right here.
Yeah, I think so. That looks like
I'll
it.
set it out.
Some of this is going to be. One of the nice things is once you get it grouped according to type, then it's basically you just do it according to size and how they put together. So you don't have to memorize a bunch of stuff. You just do it.
Well, this one.
That's lumbar. These are lumbar. Yeah. All lumbar. Pelvic. Yeah. See the number of cervicals is the same as with all mammals. I think the number of thoracic is the same in all mammals, but there may be one or two extra. And then lumbars, it's because the sacrum, of course, with us is like 7 views plus, and then coccyx. It's no determined number that I know of for whales or for any other animal. Really. Okay. That's all the injury. I mean, probably what happened is.
You can really, just by looking at the picture of that one, really see that that's.
This sucker got
weird.
smacked by something pretty good size to break up these ribs. And who knows when it happened? I mean, it could have happened when it was a fairly young individual. Like an orca could have jammed it up at some point, or sharks usually do something like that. But
You mean the
orcas-
bridge, the ribs were in pieces?
They were
When it was
broken.
they never fused or healed or
Well, what happened is
anything
the whole thing fused up in one big chunk.
like that? Oh, that one right
Yeah,
there?
and see this.
This right here shows that these were probably broken at one time,
Oh, I
and
see.
then they were just making more bone, repairing themselves, and they kind of took over and fused together.
And see, there's the other ribs there that are fused. That's 2 ribs that go out. It looks like 1 rib on the end. Those are 2 ribs that are fused together. And then this piece right here is the sternum.
This is.
This is the sternum, which is the bone that goes right here. And as you can see, there's no symmetry to this at all. It's all totally twisted and tweaked. And the reason for that is because the whale got hit in the sternal region at some point. It broke all those ribs. It broke this up. And then you've got the osteoclast and the osteoblast. Osteoblast, lay down bone, osteoclast, breakdown bone. And they have this constant reforming process on all bones. That's what keeps bones basically, healthy and growing, etc. And what happens is the osteoblasts that lay down bone just went nuts, and the osteoclasts couldn't keep up with them. And so you've got this very, very thick, dense bone that's got this really rough texture because it doesn't have anything to clean it off and smooth it out. And that's why it looks like this, and that's why the ribs are fused. And see, you can see the 2 heads of the 2 ribs, but everything else down is fused. I should take that one out.
Yeah, this one's pretty saturated.
Good. That's one of the things that's so cool about this whale.
Yeah.
Okay. See, he's got hit with a flat
fit all those pieces we can dump in the ribs. Unfortunately, when they got hit with a Flensen hand drill, it smashes them and little pieces break out and they have to replace. So that's why what I'm going to do is once we get them all matched up, take like one bone at a time with the pieces, take it to the lab, repair it, and then bring that back, grab another bone, repair it, and bring it back, and just work one with the other and repair each of the bones that needs to be repaired, and get them all so that all the bones are in 100% shape. And then meanwhile, there's still some cleaning left to be done, but then we can start impregnating the bone in the first place. And then as we go from there, we can work our way up. This is going to take
What's your estimate?
um,
About a year?
maybe two. We still, do we have, this is sidelight stuff, but we're going to start boring vertebra. And I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. I'm going to build a machine to bore these vertebrae so that it's nice and even and straight. And what we do is we run a pilot hole, okay, you know, like a 1/4 3/8 inch pilot hole. We set up where the through the central where the pipe that's going to be the main support is going to go. Then we drill a pilot hole on center where we want that, and so we drill it through this rib, or this vertebra rather. And then what we do is we take the next vertebra, we build its intercalated disc, mount that, drill through the disc, mount the next rib, and then drill the pilot hole through the next vertebra. Then we take this vertebra off, this disc off, mount that vertebra back on the drill bit, put on its calated disc, drill the hole, the next one, and that way we've got a pilot hole which is perfectly lined up in the same position across all these ribs. And in order to do that, we're going to need like a drill, a lateral drill with a platform that we can vary the height of the platform to take account. Because you can see the centrum sizes vary quite a bit from the front all the way to the end. You see some of those lumbar ones are huge. So we need that to drill the pilot hole. That then sets where we drill the next deal, which is a hole saw that we use to cut through this tougher material, this more dense bone here, nice and smoothly with a regular hole saw. And then, because we probably can't use a hole saw all the way through this, then we can go to regular auger bit. So a hole saw here and hole saw there, using the pilot of the hole saw into the pilot hole here. That means that all of the holes will be lined up all the way down the vertebral column. Then when we put our pipe on, we put the pipe up, we just slide them onto the pipe, and then what we do basically is we figure out the angle we want the vertebral elements at. We strike that arc on, you know, a master plan, or maybe we may even strike it here on a concrete, and then that's when we bring in somebody to bend the actual pipe. And with a whale this size, we're going to need at least a 2-inch pipe, would be my guess, probably schedule 40. So fairly thick walled pipe, which means it's going to be hard to find somebody that can actually bend that thick walled pipe. But I'm sure there's somebody who can. And we may have to take and strike our arc, figure out what it is, and then go to this guy's shop. He's going to go with the equipment and get that done. And then, of course, because of the mobile situation we're in, we're going to have to do it in several sections. Like we'll probably have the cervical vertebrae and probably at least half of the thoracic vertebrae in one section. And those two pipes will have to be slip fit one past the other. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have to figure out, you know, once we get the vertebral elements together, what the distances are so they can be slip fit in areas that it's convenient that we can eventually take it apart if we need to. And then that sets up the main deal. And then, of course, you've got your vertical stands, which will be bolted straight into the concrete, and then go up from there. And I think the best thing for us to do is to do a Y yoke around the outside of the vertebra, and then go in through the sides, because most everybody else, they go straight up and then bolt into the pipe. But in order to do that, they cut through the vertebra. And what I think we should be doing is minimizing the damage to the actual bone. So if we go laterally, then we're talking a hole on either side versus, you know, a 3 to 4 inch hole going up the middle of one of the vertebrae between two vertebrae. So it's going to increase damage to the bone. Whereas if we go with a yoke situation, we'll have, you know,
Plus, wouldn't that hold the weight of the skeleton better than having the pole coming up into the bottom on one part of the skeleton? But if you actually have it coming out from the sides, would that distribute
Well, we're still going to have them coming up from the bottom,
Mhm.
but the difference is instead of having, it's like, see, here's the pole that's going through the vertebra.
Mhm.
Instead of having the pole come up and connect in like this,
Mhm.
okay, we in essence split the top of the pike, so it's
Right.
like a Y-shaped yoke that
Mhm.
goes up on either side of the
Right.
vertebra, and then run along that way. But you're right that it's going to be stronger because what that's going to mean is that your plane of attachment isn't, you're going to have a lot of rotational twisting forces, if you will, on this whole thing.
Mhm.
If it goes in that way, I think it'll be stronger than just going a standard, butt pipe joint in this way. And it'll be easier for us to do it so we can mount the thing in pieces. But we definitely need to have the pipes that sleeve fit one to the other and run a bolt through it, because if you have an earthquake, the last thing you want to do is have something that's doing this up against one another. You want to have it so it's firm, so the whole thing is moving as one big unit. And the ribs the same way. A mistake that I've seen several of the skeletons make is they don't actually attach the ribs to the vertebra. They're just next to it. And you can look at the one Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History does have some attachment now, but originally it didn't. And you can see impact zones between the ribs and the costal facets. So that's bad. We want to make sure we don't have that. Anyway, this is all sidelines.
Yeah, we'll have to sit down with Rolf and probably not today, at a later date.
And then figure out, but we need, in order to do this is the point of getting off of the sideline. The point is, in order for us to figure out the size of all this stuff, the strength we've got to have a weight. And we don't have a weight, and there is no weight information available. So, and now that the bones are reasonably clean, it should be pretty accurate. All right, enough of that. See this right here? This is a little arthritic spur. Okay, right here. See the divot?
the indentation.
That's the indent of the arthritic spur to articulate in there. So the movement pattern, this bone was grinding away at this bone. Can you imagine what that felt like for this poor guy? That's neat.
That's amazing.
That's the little tricks you got to look for. And the
You
other
want to document that, Amy?
I think I got where you were pointing.
yeah. See, there's a little right here. There we go. The light catches that little spur.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And that was...
That little spur, and then if you come down here and look at this facet right here, see the indentation right here in the facet?
Hold on, I can't see. I can't find it.
Right, let's track on my arm.
Oh, right there.
See that little facet right there? That little
Okay.
indentation in the facet. That connects up with this little bump right here connecting together.
Okay.
So that then,
Oh, yeah.
see how the
Uh-huh.
one connects into the other?
Right.
It's little clues like that that I'm using to articulate it back in the right order and finalize it.
So is arthritis pretty typical in these, in whales, older whales? Or
Well, in
whales or-
any old animal, arthritis is typical.
Okay.
But whales always have kind of a funny look to their bones. But this is unusual even for most whales. You know
What do you mean, funny look?
Well, they all have this porous look. When you think of a typical bone, you think of more of a surface like you see between the discs here, this smooth, hard surface. Whereas whale bone's very porous, and what it is, of course, it's full of oil to help keep them neutrally buoyant in the water. But what I'm looking at that's kind of interesting, look at the neural spine on this thoracic vertebra right here. If you look at it from back here, you can see it is slightly out of angle. Yeah. It was probably broken at one point.
Maybe that all is related to. Where are our first two ribs? Oh, they're over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wonder if that might have been
It could have been
related
the
to
same
the
attack.
injury here with the ribs.
Chances are good this is, it could have maybe happened when a boat impact, something like that maybe. And definitely something from overhead. But it was fairly small because I don't see any damage to this one, and I don't see any damage to this one other than this arthritic in here. But if you notice, that's interesting. Yeah, there seems to be more arthritis contained in this area. See that? All this, and then it decreases as you go back. So there apparently was some sort of an injury to the dorsal surface of this whale at some point.
Arthritis can start due to an injury.
Yeah. Yeah, you ever see people that have a broken limb and they get a old lumbago when it gets cold? Well, what that is, it's basically arthritis, and when they get older, of course, they start having problems with it. I got a friend of mine. He was in a paragliding accident here 3-4 months ago. He broke his pelvis, and he's actually already got bone spurs. Pre-arthritic condition happening. He's only 25 years old, and he isn't even walking on his legs again yet. He will be, but not yet. It's a transverse process, but yeah, it is. It's longer than that one. That's why I had them reversed
Where does
originally.
this one go?
That's the neural spine or neural process.
Oh, okay.
'Cause
Transverse.
your
Okay.
spinal cord goes right
Right.
through this opening here. Let's try this way again. Yeah, that's a good articulation there. We didn't like this one here. I'm wondering if maybe there's one that's missing here. See, it's just, I think we're going to together. So we'll leave a gap in that and go through and see. It's just too weird. Yeah, see, that, you can tell that no way does that go together. But here, that's good.
Oh, that fits nicely.
Yeah. See how we're changing angles now?
Mhm.
And see this edge here? That's for the space for the rib.
Mhm.
And we're breaking out. Let's go ahead and count. See where we're at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
We're at 16.
This is 14. This is 13. So 14 is what we figured we had. And this, you can see, there's no costal. So there isn't one missing there. This must go together. So there's just a little more space in there. Yeah, we probably have to do is we do these tags, we
Yep.
write deal on them.
Right numbers on.
I brought cards.
Yeah, we can attach cards to them now.
Yeah, we can just take and put a piece of.
Of the lumbar vertebrae, soak them for a few more days, and then we know exactly where to put them when we're done.
Exactly.
Um,
And it's good you use brass too, by the way. Very good you use brass. At this point, I don't think, the vertebrae look pretty good.
Most of them.
There's
do.
no real point in continuing to soak them at this point until we run the pilot holes and the bore hole. At that point, we start soaking them again. But then it's going to be more critical because when they come out from soaking after that, because they're going to have very little oil left in them, the bone will start degrading. That's when we've got to preserve the bone, and it's going to have to be done fast. So before we bore holes, we're going to have all the tank stuff ready, and we're going to have the impregnating agent that we're going to use for preservation on hand, ready to go, and people are going to have to know exactly how the whole thing works.
Right.
And what we'll do is probably do a couple of weekend deals where I come down to get things started and go through and do that, and then at that point, then continue along.
This is my apprenticeship.
Is it?
Yes.
Get to work. So that's kind of the order when you're doing it. And so what I'm getting at this point, I don't see any other vertebrae that need to continue to be soaked.
Okay, good.
The ribs are another story.
And the ribs actually just went into the water. Not all of them have been soaked. The ribs just went into the water last week, were pulled out, cleaned, they cleaned what they saw on the bones, and that's after 1 week of soaking. So they came out of the storage area into the big tank, soaked for a week, and then here
Okay,
they are.
now, in terms of soaking,
Mhm.
we're talking months, not weeks, in order to
Right.
get these bones decreased.
Right.
So especially the ribs. The ribs are going to take the longest. The vertebra, we can shorten it after we put the holes in them.
Right.
Okay, that'll shorten the length of time for soaking on those considerably. But the ribs, the ribs need to go into water for probably 2 months. So the only thing is, before we do that, I'm going to want to make sure that the ribs, the broken ribs, aren't in risk of losing any morphology on those.
Okay.
But then the arm, the humerus and the ulnar radius, those will need to be soaked some more.
And they've gone in for one, like I said, they've had 1 week of soaking, but
Yeah, see, I mean,
they're not.
you haven't even gotten all the tissue off
No,
of
no,
this
no,
yet.
these actually haven't been soaked, only those have.
Yeah, see, this has still got tissue on it, needs to be soaked. This right here,
You can really see the difference though, can't you?
Oh, yeah. But you see this right here? You
Right.
feel it? First of all, you see this discoloration?
Right, that's not good.
what that is that's oil that's bacteria is basically growing on. And you can feel how dense this is relative to everything. This is loaded with oil, and you can feel it. Okay? So this is nowhere near done. I mean, we're months away
Why
from
don't
that.
I put that one out too for?
Well, we're gonna once we get the
the
vertebra
rib.
done, then we're gonna put the ribs out. Then we're gonna go
Okay.
ahead and do the arm. We're
Okay.
gonna do the whole thing today. It'll be totally laid out today. And then maybe what we want to do is take and put a table on either side, put the arms on.
Okay.
And if we put some newspaper down on it, and then you can take one bone at a time and soak them and then bring them back. That way everything is in order. Okay. Bill has some oil in it, actually. I found that. I was just at this little shop, and it was sitting there. And I picked that up. So that's going to be nice. I mean, it depends on here you can see there's a couple of them. But these, to me, look like ones toward
Like the rear.
posterior. Yeah, the way they're swept. See, this is definitely posterior. This one here, probably going in here somewhere. This one is. This was the interior of this one. And these here.
Now the little processes that are, I guess, anterior to the neural process.
Here.
Yeah, the little nubs. What are those called?
Nubs.
Little nubs. Because it looks like that there's arthritic stuff on there too.
And then got me going nuts. I'm
I'm
gonna have to
sorry.
go look it up.
I'll look it up. Can you go look it up?
It should be, there's a little section there on bones, you should see it there. That's something I should know off the top of my head, I just can't remember right now.
have a tape measure?
Yeah.
I can get one.
We'll get it for Ellen's office.
The lateral processes, the way they're swept, they basically come out, they're almost non-existent in the cervical vertebrae. You've got the little lateral deal there, which is for the blood vessels to flow through the head, the carotid artery, jugular vein, that sort of thing goes through those openings in the cervical vertebrae, just like it does in people. When you get up closer to the head, it's not the same as this, but anyway, analogous. Then you get into the transverse processes that are basically coming straight out to slightly swept forward and a nubbed neural crest, a neural spine. Then it breaks into a back swept in the lumbar vertebra. The lateral processes are swept back, and the neural processes are also swept back more and come up higher. So the angle of them changes as you go back. Then when you get past this region, these lateral processes start being swept forward. And if you look at the ones I've got over there, those are sweeping forward ever so slightly. The other thing you notice is they're going from narrow to wider, and that helps. But what's been bugging me is that this one doesn't fall in line with the others. But every other clue that I've got tells me that this is the right order. And what would really finalize it is if I had these neural crests, that would satisfy me. So I think at this point what we're going to have to do is we'll go with it at this point, and then when we actually pull out the broken pieces and put the broken pieces on, that'll convince me. So I'm not willing to cast this in stone yet, but that's the next section of the lumbar vertebra. And from here, see, this is the other one at the bottom, but that doesn't work.
Just about heaved it.
Well, you know what I did when it was still in the water? I dove in the water and just free dove, my wetsuit on and had the snorkel mask on. And I actually swam down. I was checking the whole thing out. I went underneath it, and I swam right up inside the mouth, and I was inside the baleen. And then all of a sudden, it hit me, even underwater. I immediately started to gag immediately.
It was nasty.
I really thought I was going to lose my cookies under the water at that time. I was just looking to see if the vertebral centra were different sizes, and it's not significant enough to really help give me a clue. Obviously, these things are going together, but as you can tell, there's one that still has to go in here.
This one looks
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
weird. Yeah,
Oh no, it's
I'm-
in there, huh?
I'm
That one looks
wondering,
a little weird.
yeah, I'm wondering if, because most of this stuff fits pretty darn well.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that one is supposed to go right in here. That's definitely not it. Isn't that correct? It's a $52 question. most mammals, the neural spines actually change direction too. They start shifting more and marine stuff. Just
Start to come on this.
no, what it is up front, they're swept back like this, and they're coming out almost perfectly horizontal. This is obviously tipped, but they're coming out straight to the side. As you go farther back, they're dropping, so they're not straight out, they're dropping slightly. But these processes, the lateral processes themselves, they're swept slightly back. See how they kind of come out and then sweep back? Whereas in thoracic, they're coming out basically and stopping, so they're slightly swept forward. These come out and sweep back, and as you go farther back, they come out, and then now they're sweeping. They're not really sweeping at all. They're just coming out and then straightening out. And then as we get farther back, they're coming out and continuing more anteriorly. As we go farther back, you're going to find that they're coming anteriorly. You look at some of those over there. You can see how they're sticking anteriorly. So we've got a change going on there. We also have this change in elevation, which is why I'm sighting down like this to see how we're doing.
Land at both sides at the same time, it's getting kind of hard because
a couple of these are missing sides, processes on the other side. That looks pretty good. See how that's doing nice.
See how we're changing angle right here? That's how come that's funny. And allow these to go like that. Looks good. Yeah, that's what's going on. That's why this guy isn't sitting up straight, because if you look at it, cross section, you can see that this is smaller than this side, and we've got a bit of arthritis on the bottom, which is accentuating that. So I think that's why this one's sitting funny. It's because of that. So, that's the order.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and spread when it's fresh.
We'll go out there and get that bag.
Yeah, just keep letting it dry, 'cause we've got
Yeah, it does. Nice big bone spur.
arthritic
Oh, wow.
deposit. Actually, you know what that is? No, you know what that is? That's part of a chevron.
That's part of the chevron that's broke off. So this is where the chevrons begin. So they should all have chevron scars. Yes, scars from the chevrons.
What's the chevron?
That's these bones over here. These go underneath the vertebra on the caudal.
What is those for?
They're remnants because evolutionarily mammals had neural as well as ventral spines down most of the backs. You look at a lot of fish, they've got that, particularly in the caudal region, and because it's a wide paddle-type tail. And these guys are fairly early in mammalian evolution, and it's just an old holdback. But of course, they've gone the exact opposite route. Instead of having a laterally compressed tail, they've got dorsal-ventrally compressed fluke apparatus, so they've changed completely. But they still have the chevron bones as remnants, just like they still have the pelvic,
The little
two pelvic bones.
vestigial pelvic bone.
Right, it's, in these guys, it's a fused ischium and ilium, and the pubis is completely lost.
This is,
And then on the coccyx, particularly the terminal coccyx, they're fused, and you'll see them fused into some of these coccyx, especially the ones out there in the bag. Okay. So we'll worry about the chevrons later. Right now, let's get the vertebrae in order, and then once we get them in order, we'll rock them up on their sides and fit the chevrons. Hopefully, we're not missing these chevrons. See how these are, if you look at them, make a line down the center, they're not bilaterally symmetrical. That's how you know those are cobbles or coccyx vertebrae. For some reason in mammals, they just lose that bilateral symmetry when they get past the sacral region, and it's the same case for these
Wait.
cetaceans.
Can you point on that one, how it's not,
Yeah, this one is still kind of getting there. What you do is draw a line down the center here. And all the other vertebrae, one side is even with the other. And you see this one, see how it's kind of out of kilter versus the one side, see it's a little out of whack. And what you're going to see is the whole thing is going to get more and more out of whack as we go farther back on these coccyx vertebrae. This one right here would be the sternal region, so it's not too bad yet. But the next ones that we're going to work on now are going to be really out of whack. Okay, we'll get that in the bag.
on the sides of the,
It's blood vessels actually move through through these holes here, all around the sides. Things get totally weird when you get into these coccyx vertebrae. At this point, you can almost just do it by size. So here we got the next one. But if you look at them, see how they're no longer symmetrical. They're kind of just tweaked out a little bit. And if you look at them in cross section, you can see how the one side is much larger than the other. And that's how you tell that that's front, that's back. So in a lot of ways, the coccyx are a lot easier to deal with than the rest of the vertebrae. Because I can just sit here like that.
but you said you think there are like 6 missing off the end?
Yeah, we actually have a few more, I think. Hopefully they're over there. But there's about 6 missing. The tip of the tail, you can see here, this is the last one we have in this batch, and you can see you got a disc on this side and a disc on that side. The terminus doesn't have a disc. And we're missing the disc. The other thing that's interesting is if you look at the morphology of the disc, first of all, these aren't as fused as the rest of the vertebra. Most of the rest of the vertebra are pretty well fused, but these aren't as fused. But also, see how they're both dished? So it's opposing dishes. That's the way fish vertebrae are, not mammalian. Mammalian, usually you've got more of a ball and socket type joint. But in cetaceans, they've got this disc deal. And then, of course, there's a piece of cartilaginous material, so it'd be about that far apart, but that'd all be cartilaginous material between there.
So why do you think it's adapted that way as with the fish?
Well, with a fish, it's for rigidity.
Okay.
And so the reality of it is for a whale, it's rigidity as well.
Okay.
Yeah, let's try it. Go and Ta-da. A lot easier. And then if you look, you can see how this kind of hump right here is increasing, but it's a little bit asymmetrical. And if you compare that to the other side, there's not quite as much of a hump. So that gives me a little bit more information because they do tend to share the same configuration through the whole column. I think it's kind of neat. As if you look in here, you can see cross bridging in the center of the vertebra
And
here.
what's that from?
It's structural support. You know, cross bridging. There's cross bridging inside of all of these, but you just can't see it. But in this one, you can. And the one ahead of it, you can see as well. You can see the cross bridging in there. So, anyway, with that, let's move on. Do we have a roll of masking tape? Those are, of course, the first two.
So how can you tell which are further up?
Size and the articulation. See how the heads of the ribs are different?
Uh-huh.
You've got more anteriorly, you got 2 articulation points, whereas more posterior, you got 1. Because these are, you know, fully protected ribs, whereas the ones in the back are kind of more floating ribs.
Oh, hi.
Not sure that those are in the right spot.
Yeah, I should write that up. I mean, I should change it and, you know, get the names right and whatnot. Because I just sort of wrote it fast and didn't really,
Change the names to protect.
just sort of kind of
Protect the guilt.
long it here. Okay, it's good to see you.
Hey, you too.
You know, let them know, and so that I know when this stuff is going on, because this would be kind of fun. I would get into working on this.
At this point, I just want to kind of get ready to put the brakes on a little bit and get the structural design figured out,
Yeah.
because everything else goes from there.
Yeah.
And the bones are they're clean enough now that the next step is we've got to put holes in them, and I don't want to put holes in until we know what we're doing on the structural support.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, I think we're getting ready. I'm not sure those are in the right order yet. But anyway, yeah, let
Yep.
you know.
Yeah.
Chunk out of it.
That's the arm bone?
Yeah, that's the humerus, the upper arm.
Okay.
We'll grab that other scapula. that one. Right there. So just set that there.
That's it. Oh, it's over there on the table behind you. Over.
That's good. That means we're only missing minor pieces.
Could it go on the other one?
Yeah, it's this one. Yeah, it's just too big.
So does it have the same arm bones as a human?
Yep.
Or is it a regular mammal? The ulna
Yeah,
and
all
the radius?
mammals have what's called a pentadactyl limb,
Uh-huh.
which starts out with a single upper arm, humerus or the femur if it's in the rear. Then it goes to the ulnar radius in the arm, or tibia fibia in the leg. And then you've got your carpals and tarsals, which are all those little bones wrinkling around. And then your
Meta?
metacarpals and your metatarsals, which are like the hand and the main part of your foot, and then your phalanx, which are the tips. And the number of actual phalanx is variable, but everything else is fixed. So it's 1, 2, mini, and then basically 5 digits. And whales even have 5 digits, but the number 2 and number 3 are supernumerary, which means they've got more digits than what is typical for a mammal. Okay, I cannot remember. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Blanks go on from there. Okay, the chevrons go underneath the vertebra. They're kind of a ventral spine process associated with the tail. And what they are is they've got articular surfaces on the dorsal surface of the chevron And what the chevron does, it comes in and it articulates actually between the two vertebrae, right in here. So you see how those facets fit together right in there like that. And so then what you get is you get a whole row of these things, and it adds rigidity to the tail. So it gives you a little structural support. But you can see how it goes between, not on. It doesn't really work in here, but they go between like this, all the way down. So that's why when I'm laying these out, I'm laying them out between the vertebrae, so we know which ones they go between. This vertebra right here is the beginning of the chevrons, and it's a little strange. There's one piece broken off, but it doesn't. It's more fused to the vertebra, whereas the rest of these are free, and free is the way they're supposed to be. But for whatever reason, that one's fused up.
Are all the chevrons here?
I don't know yet. There's still a few more in a bucket I need to put out, but it looks pretty good. I think there's 3 or 4 more, and that's about all there really should be. And they obviously change shape. They're very tall and skinny, and they get very wide and narrow, and eventually they turn into nothing more than just kind of a plate on the bottom of the bone. But you can see these vertebrae are turned on their sides at the bottom, showing, so I can show you how that articulates. So I'll go ahead and put these back now, and then put the chevrons in position. And once again, it would go between it, but it goes underneath. This one's got it.
These are pretty long, like here, that might go up on the.
See, this has got to go in here somewhere. I'm sure of it.
That's
You know, it's got, see, just with the little, piece missing or something out of there. That right there actually feels pretty good. But, what I need to do is when we actually go through and fix each bone, I'll just have these pieces trying on each one.
I just don't see how you're gonna have the time to do all of them.
Slow. That you just literally nail to the side of the table so that nobody can touch it.
Oh, yeah, that's not bad.
So that you can still be out.
Or actually have, I was actually thinking of making it like a construction site. So you do the holes, and it's a construction site.
There you go. That's good. Yeah.
Now you can have all the drawings and the whole thing, and say, okay, it's gonna be open on this date, the building is way on this exact.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How much load bearing can these beams take?
It can take some, but right now we're saying that it's not gonna hold any. We said no live load.
Well,
We built this one in particular because it can take a live load, because obviously that beam angle would do a lot better.
well, the reality. Punch into this and bolt on plate. Good sized plate.
Yeah. Everything's gotta have real engineering. So
Big time. Big time.
really comes in, there's no way.
All right, I'm gonna blow this popsicle stand.
Good. Grab a drink on the way out. It's I guess.
Blacksmiths/welders that used to do tools for whaling industry still around. He did up those hooks for us to move the.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, is he still around?
He's still around, but I don't deal with him. He's not that good. He's not happy.
What I'm looking for is, it'd be a good idea to get some new tools.
Oh, for display and so on.
And also, personally, for when I'm doing whales, plenty of knives and stuff like that. There are
does it have the same arm bones as a human?
Yep.
Or is it a regular mammal? The ulna,
Yeah,
the
all
radius?
mammals have what's called a pentadactyl limb,
Uh-huh.
which starts out with a single upper arm, humerus or the femur if it's in the rear. Then it goes to the ulnar radius in the arm, or tibia fibia in the leg. And then you've got your carpals and tarsals, which are all those little bones wrinkling around. And then your metacarpals and your metatarsals, which are like the hand and the main part of your foot. And then your phalanx, which are the tips. And the number of actual phalanx is variable, but everything else is fixed. So it's 1, 2, mini, and then basically 5 digits. And whales even have 5 digits, but the number 2 and number 3 are supernumerary, which means they've got more digits than what is typical for a mammal. Okay, I can't remember. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Flanks along from there. Okay, the chevrons go underneath the vertebra. They're kind of a ventral spine process associated with the tail. And what they are is they've got articular surfaces on the dorsal surface of the chevron. And what the chevron does, it comes in and it articulates actually between the two vertebrae, right in here. So you see how those facets fit together right in there like that. And so then what you get is you get a whole row of these things, and it adds rigidity to the tail. So it gives you a little structural support. But you can see how it goes between, not on. It doesn't really work in here, but they go between like this, all the way down. So that's why when I'm laying these out, I'm laying them out between the vertebrae, so we know which ones they go between. This vertebra right here is the beginning of the chevrons, and it's a little strange. There's one piece broken off, but it doesn't. It's more fused to the vertebra, whereas the rest of these are free, and free is the way they're supposed to be. But for whatever reason, that one's fused up.
Are all the chevrons here?
I don't know yet. There's still a few more in a bucket I need to put out, but it looks pretty good. I think there's 3 or 4 more, and that's about all there really should be. And they obviously change shape. They're very tall and skinny, and they get very wide and narrow, and eventually they turn into nothing more than just kind of a plate on the bottom of the bone. But you can see these vertebrae are turned on their sides, so the bottom is showing, so I can show you how that articulates. So I'll go ahead and put these back now, and then put the chevrons in position. Once again, it would go between it, but it goes underneath. This one's got to go on.
These are pretty long, like here, it might go up on the...
See, this has got to go in here somewhere. I'm sure of it.
That is close.
You know, it's got, see, just with a little, piece missing or something out of there. That right there actually feels pretty good. But, what I need to do is when we actually go through and fix each bone, I'll just have these pieces trying on each one.
I just don't see how you're going to have the time to do all of them.
Slow.
Okay.
literally nailed to the side of the table so that nobody can touch it.
Oh, yeah, that's something, yeah.
You know, so that you can still
Or,
be
or
out.
actually have, I was actually thinking of making it like a construction site, but actually, so you can do the whole, it's a construction site.
There you go. That's good.
And then,
Yeah.
now you can have all the drawings of the whole thing, and say, okay, you know, it's gonna be open on this date, the building is this way, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How much load bearing can these beams take?
It can take some, but right now, we're saying that it's not gonna hold any. We say no live load.
Well, you know,
We built this one particular because it can take a live load, because obviously that beam angle would do a lot better.
well, you know, the reality is punch into this and bolt on plate. Good sized plate.
Yeah. Everything's gotta have real engineering. So,
Big time. Big time.
really comes in, there's no trouble.
All right, I'm gonna blow this popsicle stand.
Good. Grab a drink on the way out, there's
Blacksmiths / welders that used to do tools for whaling industry still around. He did up those hooks for us to move the.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, is he still around?
He's still around, but I don't deal with him. He's not that good, he's not hack.
What I'm looking for is, it'd be a good idea to get some new tools.
Oh, for display, that's all.
And also, personally, for when I'm doing whales, you know, cleansing knife and stuff like that. You know,